The phone call never came. Or maybe it did, and John Dorsey hung up before the first ring finished. Either way, the message from Cleveland's former savior was crystal clear, brutal, and final. That ship has sailed. 4 words that didn't just close a door on the Browns' desperate attempt to bring back the man who drafted Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb. 4 words that exposed just how toxic, how broken, how utterly radioactive the Cleveland Browns organization has become. Because when a general manager who once loved your franchise so much that he poured his soul into rebuilding it from an 0-16 nightmare looks you dead in the eye and says, "No thanks, I'd rather stay retired than touch that mess again," you've hit rock bottom. And now, with Dorsey's rejection echoing across the NFL, Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry are scrambling, panicking, and making their next move. And it's not what anyone expected. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story isn't just about John Dorsey saying no. It's about what happens when an entire league watches you crash and burn so spectacularly that even your own legends won't come back to save you. Let's start with the rejection that broke Cleveland's heart all over again. November 8th, 2025, Jonathan Peterlin, host of Afternoon Drive on ESPN Cleveland, dropped a bomb that sent shockwaves through Browns Nation. I talked to somebody that directly talked to John Dorsey yesterday. That ship has sailed. The context? Paul DePodesta, the Browns' chief strategy officer for nearly a decade, had just abruptly resigned to become president of baseball operations for the Colorado Rockies. It left a gaping hole in Cleveland's front office, and immediately fans started dreaming. Bring back Dorsey, the guy who saved us from 0-16, the guy who built the foundation that finally ended our playoff drought, the guy who understood Cleveland, who loved Cleveland, who gave us hope for the first time in 20 years. But Dorsey, he wanted nothing to do with it. That ship has sailed. Translation, I've seen what you've become. I've watched Jimmy Haslam cycle through coaches and general managers like they're disposable. I've watched you hire Kevin Stefanski, give him nothing to work with, and then fire him after he won Coach of the Year twice. I've watched you trade everything for Deshaun Watson and turn your franchise into a punchline. I've watched Andrew Berry, the guy who replaced me, make decision after decision that left your roster in shambles. And you think I'm coming back to clean up that catastrophe? Absolutely not. That ship, it sailed a long time ago. The emotional weight of that rejection cannot be overstated. John Dorsey was the Browns' general manager from 2017 through 2019. He walked into a building that had just finished 0-16, the worst season in modern NFL history. And he didn't run. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work. In his first draft, he selected Baker Mayfield first overall, the Heisman Trophy-winning quarterback who would lead Cleveland to its first playoff win since 1994. In the second round, he drafted Nick Chubb, who became one of the most explosive running backs in football. He traded for Jarvis Landry, giving Mayfield a legitimate #1 receiver. He brought in Odell Beckham Jr., trying to give his young quarterback elite weapons. He signed Kareem Hunt, despite the controversy, betting on talent and redemption. And for a brief, beautiful moment, it worked. The Browns went 7-8-1 in 2018, their first winning record in over a decade. They made the playoffs in 2020 and beat the Steelers. They had hope, they had belief, they had a future. But then Dorsey made one fatal mistake. He hired Freddie Kitchens as head coach. Kitchens, who had never been a coordinator, who had no business running an NFL team, went 6-10 in his only season. The talent was there: Mayfield, Chubb, Beckham, Landry, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward. But Kitchens couldn't maximize it. He made inexplicable game day decisions. He lost the locker room, and after one disastrous year, he was fired. And because Dorsey had hired Kitchens, because ownership blamed him for that colossal failure, Dorsey was forced out too. December 31st, 2019, the Browns announced they had mutually agreed to part ways with John Dorsey. It was devastating. The man who had rebuilt the franchise from rubble was gone after just 2 years, and Cleveland entered the 2020s searching for its 5th chief decision-maker in 8 years. Fast forward to today, Dorsey is a senior personnel executive with the Detroit Lions, working for a team that has gone from laughingstock to Super Bowl contender under stable, competent leadership. And when Cleveland came calling, either directly or indirectly, hoping he might consider returning to fix another mess, he said no, that ship has sailed. And that rejection forced Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry to confront a brutal reality. Nobody wants this job. Nobody trusts this organization. Nobody believes in this vision. So what do? They pivot. They scramble. They make their next shocking move. Enter the coaching search disaster. Kevin Stefanski was fired on January 5th, 2026, one day after the season ended. Andrew Berry, the general manager whose roster construction left the Browns with the 31st ranked offense in the league, kept his job. And now, Berry is leading the search for Cleveland's next head coach, the 16th different head coach since 1999. Let that sink in. 16 head coaches in 27 years. The Steelers have had 3 in that same span. The Ravens have had 2. But Cleveland? Chaos, turnover, dysfunction. The search started with promise. Mike McDaniel, the former Dolphins head coach and offensive genius, was a top target. He interviewed virtually and was scheduled for a second in-person interview on January 21st, but then he withdrew completely. He told the Browns, "Thanks but no thanks, I'd rather be an offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers than be your head coach." Think about that. A guy who was just a head coach for 4 years chose to take a demotion to go back to being a coordinator rather than coach the Cleveland Browns. That's not just a red flag. That's a 5-alarm fire screaming that this organization is toxic. Jesse Minter, the Chargers defensive coordinator who was scheduled for a second interview on January 22nd, canceled. He doesn't even want to waste his time. The belief, according to Browns beat writer Mary Kay Cabot, is that Minter feels he has better head coaching opportunities elsewhere. Translation? Cleveland isn't a serious destination. It's a last resort, a place you only go if you have no other options. And now the Browns are stuck. They have 5 known candidates left. Jim Schwartz, their own defensive coordinator who interviewed and seems like the safe, boring choice. Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator who was Cleveland's OC under Freddie Kitchens in 2019 and saw the dysfunction firsthand. Grant Udinski, the 30-year-old Jaguars offensive coordinator who would be the youngest head coach in NFL history if hired. Nate Scheelhaus, the Rams passing game coordinator who can't interview until after the NFC Championship game. And Aiden Durday, the Seahawks defensive coordinator who's a wild card candidate with limited play-calling experience. But here's the problem. The Browns need 2 in-person interviews with minority candidates to satisfy the NFL's Rooney Rule. Mike McDaniel was one. Nate Scheelhaus is the other. But Scheelhaus can't interview yet. And with McDaniel pawned, they need to find another minority candidate just to check a box. It's a self-inflicted disaster, a coaching search in complete disarray, and the emotional toll on Browns fans who have endured decades of this incompetence is unbearable. So what's the shocking next move? According to multiple reports, the Browns are now targeting Grant Udinski, the wonderkind offensive coordinator who has never called plays but is considered a quarterback savant. Udinski worked with Sam Darnold in Minnesota, helping turn him into a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in 2024. He's working with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, where Lawrence had a career year before getting injured. He's young, hungry, and represents the kind of high-risk, high-reward hire that Cleveland has avoided for years. And fans, they're all in. An ESPN Cleveland poll asked Browns fans if they want Udinski, and the response has been overwhelming. People are desperate for something different, someone exciting, a fresh start that doesn't feel like recycled mediocrity. But there's fear, too. What if Udinski, who has never been a head coach, who has never called plays, who has only been a coordinator for 1 year, isn't ready? What if Cleveland hires him and he crashes and burns like Freddie Kitchens? What if this is just another disaster in a long line of disasters? The emotional stakes are crushing. Browns fans want to believe. They want to hope.
but hope has betrayed them so many times that it's hard to trust anything anymore. And then there's the Jim Schwartz angle. Players reportedly love him. He's the safe choice, the veteran, the guy who built the Lions into a playoff team in the early 2010s before losing his job. But is safe what Cleveland needs? Schwartz is 59 years old. He's never won a Super Bowl as a head coach. And if the Browns wanted continuity, why not just keep Kevin Stefanski? The move from Stefanski to Schwartz feels lateral at best, uninspiring at worst. And that's the nightmare scenario. Firing a two-time Coach of the Year to hire a retread who represents more of the same. Meanwhile, the emotional scars from John Dorsey's rejection keep bleeding. Browns fans remember what Dorsey built. They remember the excitement of drafting Baker Mayfield. They remember Nick Chubb breaking tackles and Jarvis Landry catching everything. They remember beating the Steelers in the playoffs for the first time in 26 years. They remember hope. And now that same man, the architect of their best recent memories, won't even consider coming back, because Cleveland has become a place where good people go to have their careers ruined and their legacies tarnished. Arthur Blank just hired Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta and made a statement about vision and leadership. The Falcons are ascending, the Browns are descending, and the gap between competent organizations and dysfunctional ones has never been more obvious. Tampa Bay has Baker Mayfield thriving. The Giants have John Harbaugh leading them forward. The Chargers have Mike McDaniel running their offense. And Cleveland? They're interviewing 30-year-olds with zero head coaching experience and hoping for a miracle.
The shocking next move isn't just about who they hire. It's about the desperation behind it, the scrambling, the lack of a coherent plan. Andrew Berry keeping his job while Stefanski lost his. Paul DePodesta leaving for baseball. John Dorsey refusing to return. Mike McDaniel withdrawing. Jesse Minter canceling. This is organizational chaos at its finest. And Jimmy Haslam, the owner who has overseen all of it, who has fired 5 head coaches in 13 years, who has made bad decision after bad decision, is once again promising that this time will be different. But why should anyone believe him? The Browns will eventually hire someone. Maybe it's Grant Udinski, the young offensive mind, who could be brilliant, or could be another Freddie Kitchens. Maybe it's Jim Schwartz, the safe veteran who inspires zero excitement. Maybe it's someone else entirely. But whoever it is, they're walking into a nightmare. A franchise with no quarterback, an offensive line with only one starter under contract for 2026, a wide receiver room with no true number one, a defense that's losing Myles Garrett to free agency rumors, and an owner who has proven time and again that he doesn't know how to build a winner. John Dorsey saw all of this. He lived it once, and when given the chance to do it again, he said that ship has sailed. Those 4 words are Cleveland's epitaph, a monument to dysfunction, a reminder that no matter how many coaches they hire, no matter how many general managers they cycle through, no matter how much hope they try to manufacture, the Browns are broken. And until something fundamental changes at the ownership level, they will remain broken. That's not pessimism, that's reality. And John Dorsey's rejection just confirmed it for the entire world to see. This story is based on reports from ESPN Cleveland, NFL Network, Yahoo Sports, NBC Sports, and various outlets covering the Browns' coaching search and John Dorsey's response to potential return rumors.